Hello to you. My name is Jessie Johnson. This is The Horizon. How the horizon seemingly rises with eye and camera levels. The Earth is 100% flat, not ball-shaped and not spinning. See my videos. Write Jessie, Jessie Johnson into YouTube. My image will appear 4 or 5 down in a circle with deep green trees as background. Click Videos once reaching home page. The heliocentric model of a universe is 96 to 97% false. Astronomy is religion, not science. You must have faith to accept such nonsense. The reason the horizon seemingly rises with eye and camera levels can only happen on a flat Earth and is simple. Your expansion of view is equal to your height or altitude above sea level. If you're 2 feet tall and at the beach, you have 2 feet expansion of view. If you're 6 feet tall, you have 6 feet expansion of view. If you're 35,000 feet up, you have 35,000 feet expansion of view. If you're 75 miles to 300 miles up, you have 75 miles to 300 miles expansion of view. At those heights and altitudes and others, the horizon will seemingly rise with eye and camera levels. Why? Look at these illustrations, please. This here is in miles. 20, 30, 40, 60, 75, 90, 100 miles altitudes. Each one a height altitude above sea level. Each one gives an expansion of view. Each one gives an expansion of view. An expansion of view. Each one gives an expansion of view of each altitude line at each altitude point above ground. The view more greater than the one below it. 3. From the altitude line, which is 90 degrees to the ground, from the altitude line, which is 90 degrees to the ground, and the lines of sight, which is 0 degrees to 90 degrees to the altitude line, a set of angles of view, from any one of these altitudes, a set of angles of view above ground lines of sight is made. The ground itself and the atmoplane is flat indefinitely. Using infrared light, one sees further than visible light. Using infrared light, one sees further than with visible light. Visible light is about 2,300 miles, and infrared light is about 4,600 mile distances when dealing with the distance of the horizon, when you're 100 miles up. 4,600 miles go to the 100 miles. These are lines of sight indefinitely or perpendicular to the surface. Now, the altitude in this case is 100 miles up indefinitely or perpendicular to the surface. When one looks 90 degrees to the altitude lines, one sight limit is reached at the horizon points. Right here, horizon point. Because of perception and perspective vantage points limits. The altitude line is perpendicular. The altitude line is perpendicular to the ground, and the 90 degree to the altitude line is parallel to the ground. Now, the ground is flat and leveled. flat and level. The altitude line is perpendicular to it at 100 miles indefinitely. Infrared enables one to see more than visible light. The horizon has a limiting distance from the onlooker and comes to a perception vantage point. Or horizon point. To continue, the altitude in this case is 100 miles above ground. This is the ground, and this is the altitude point here, right here, 100 miles above ground. The altitude line is the distance. The altitude line is the distance vertically above ground and is perpendicular with the ground. The altitude line is the distance vertically above ground, and is perpendicular with the ground, 90 degrees with the ground, perpendicular. If one looks straight down along the altitude line toward the ground from one's height altitude, and then look at any angle from that forward, look at any angle from that point forward, look at any angle from that point forward, one's angle of view above ground lines of sight broadens along and from one's expansion of view. This height creates expansions of view, and from it you can look forward. In visible light at 100 miles altitude, one can see about 2,300 miles distance, where the horizon is. In infrared light, which penetrates further than visible light, the horizon is about 4,600 miles. 4,600 miles. About 4,600 miles distance away. The ground is parallel. The ground is here. Ground is parallel to all 90 degree to the altitude lines, and 90 degree to the altitude lines of sight. If you are at any altitude height above ground, then your altitude is always 90 degrees to the ground, no matter how far extended above a flat earth, which is parallel. And if your eyeballs are looking vertically down, this is the eyeball right here, if the eyeball is looking vertically down along the altitude line, then the eyeball will rotate upward when angling upward towards the horizon. It will start to rotate upward while angling toward the horizon. And the pupil, these dots right here are the pupils, These large dots right here will rotate upward also until it is looking 90 degrees to the altitude line. 90 degrees to the altitude line. The ground, here's the ground is here, and all 90 degrees to the altitude lines is, no matter the altitude, no matter what altitude you pick, no matter what altitude, is parallel and stays parallel to the ground. Parallel lines extend as far as the eye and camera can see, which is to the horizon points right here. In this case, about 4,600 miles. Distance from the onlooker. The onlooker is here. The horizon point is here. Distance away. The horizon point is where all parallel lines and ground seemingly meet at a perspective vantage point. All of it meets at a perspective vantage point here. All parallel lines seemingly comes together at a vantage point, where all parallel lines seemingly meet at a perspective vantage point, and perception vantage point is equal to the distance to the horizon, in this case 4,600 miles, divided by the altitude above ground. The altitude above ground is 100. By the altitude above ground, in this case, it's 4,600 miles to the horizon divided by 100 miles. Altitude equals 46, or 146 as a fraction. In other words, 100 miles divided by 46 equals 2.2 miles. At 4,600 miles distance away, the eyes nor the camera will not be able to see this 2.2 mile difference at 4,600 miles away. At the horizon point right here, at the horizon point at the horizon point, perception and perspective meet. Perception and perspective meet right here at this point. And neither the eye nor camera can see any further as a visibility limit. Where the horizon point is, it goes beyond the visible range of the eye and camera for the specific altitude per expansion of view. I want to thank everyone for listening and watching, and share this video, and have a very good day.